Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla, let's go over the market, let's figure out what happened this week and what we can expect moving into next week and of course the remainder of September. So as usual, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor, and of course my membership section on YouTube is live. Link is down below if you're interested in getting my essentially intraday thoughts on Tesla as it's moving throughout the day live. But all that being said, let's jump into it. Tesla closing the day down at about $274.50 per share, which is going to be down about 0.7% on the day, which thankfully, at least compared to the market, pretty damn good outperformance, right? The market, the QQQ, for instance, down about 1.7%, a pretty severe day for the market here. I'm assuming due to the UAW strike happening right now, right? If you haven't heard, I think it's GM, Stellantis, and Ford, the strikers in the union, of course, UAW, are on strike. Which oddly enough, if we actually go over to TradingView, I mean, last time I checked, at least they were green. Tesla's red and then they were green, which is just, yeah. Ford ended flat, I guess, but GM is green. Not really sure why or how that is. It's like almost as if the workers from Tesla are the ones on strike, not, GM and Ford, which is just really strange. But nonetheless, let's talk about what it overall means for Tesla. So let's go on the 65-minute chart first. And you can see, it's not looking as amazing. So we had a, pretty nice early morning push, right? We actually came up to almost $280. We went up to $279 per share, which is pretty good, right? That was only $1 away from that 280 level we've been talking about, right? We talked about the low kind of potentially mid 280s pretty much for a few days now, talking about how that is definitely a possibility. And we only got about $1 away from it, which isn't too shabby. And unfortunately, this seems to be that, this might be all that we get, at least for now, right? It seems like this might not be, it's looking a little bit not amazing now, right? After this push that we had, which if you took profit on it, congratulations. Otherwise, the RSI, you can see here, right, the bearish divergence still very much in play, right? As we're technically making higher highs over here, the RSI is making lower highs. And as we're making higher lows, we're now, of course, making lower lows on the RSI. So essentially getting a bearish divergence. The MACD has officially flipped and looks decently, bearish for the most part, right? Again, on a 65-minute or 1 hour time frame. So not looking amazing here, right? And now, of course, that we finally did get, actually rejected down below the 275 level again, and essentially created a false breakout-ish. Not amazing, right? Massive sell-off from and massive rejection from that area, from the 280s. And of course, we also came back up to try and get back into this zone. And of course, got another rejection. We're at least closing relatively close to where it was. But, we did the same thing on this candle right here, right? We closed pretty much right, just barely below that, major level I've been talking about, right? The 275-ish. And of course, we had another sell-off following that as well. So, this can easily follow here as well. So just keep that in mind. So not a super duper convincing close and definitely a little bit concerning price action, even though we did get to our price target, or I guess we were off by just $1 or $2. Ultimately, not too bad at all in terms of getting that price target, but again, not the best look on the close. Going over to the daily really quickly, right? Again, ultimately, I personally still expect us to come down to the 50-day moving average, right? Like that really wouldn't shock me whatsoever. And then, of course, we'd have to see how it actually acts from that, right? The MACD is kind of softening up. The RSI is kind of softening up as well, right? Not looking the worst, but not looking the best. It's looking extremely neutral on the daily to me, right? The MACD is looking technically bullish, but it's also softening up. So things are starting to slow down, right? And as I'm sure it's quite obvious now, right? Things are definitely starting to slow down. Momentum is slowing down and kind of drying up a little bit here as well. And unfortunately, the thing that I don't like is I'm not a fan of the way the market looks right now, right? The market, definitely a massive red day. So we can get a little bit of a bounce, right? Just kind of like a mini dead cat bounce early next week, maybe Monday, maybe Tuesday. Right, that's definitely a possibility, but the market is not looking too hot, right? Again, if you look at QQQ, where we fell out of this overall ascending channel, right, came back from over here, came back up to retest that, and now we're closing candles below the 50-day moving average, which isn't great, right? SPY, kind of a similar concept. We're still technically in the channel for SPY, but I mean, maybe if you bring this up over here, it's not actually no. We'll worry about that another time, because technically you can also argue the fact that maybe it's something like this as well. Give or take, right? Which we're still technically in that channel as well, roughly. But the main thing I don't like about SPY is the fact that it is also below the 50-day moving average, which isn't great. The MACD on the daily looks like it wants to flip bearish as well, right? Same with the QQQ. It looks like it wants to flip bearish. The RSI, you can see, is pointing straight down. So the market itself is looking a little bit shaky, which of course can affect Tesla, right? And again, on the daily, Tesla's still looking pretty mediocre as well. Option flow surprisingly was more bullish than bearish, and still kind of is. I mean, it's looking a little bit more mixed now. In the morning, it was definitely more bullish than bearish, but now it's kind of like 50-50, right? There's a lot of like indecision between what Tesla's doing, right? There's a lot of green circles here, but a lot of red ones. I would argue more red than green here, but there's more green than red here, and of course, more red than green here. So there's a lot of indecision. It seems like people aren't 100% sure where Tesla wants to go next. I personally think it's time to cool off. I do believe that Tesla will at least go sideways, if not come down to the 50-day moving average. That's personally what I expect, right? We are, of course, still trading in this higher volume area. But again, if we come down to this higher volume, even higher volume area, I should say, down over here, again, close to the 50-day moving average, of course, this increase in volume, the bars you can see here, will naturally act now as a support. And I think from there, it'll be really important to see what happens, because there we can, of course, get potential bounce from here, and then assuming that happens, we'll discuss further what that can lead to next. But as I zoom out over here, and we'll get the other patterns already, let me go ahead and remove this as well. Where is it? Here it is, right? It's important to understand that we are very, very close. Like this 280 level that we touched essentially this morning, pretty much right at that red line, right? That overall trend line since the all-time highs. I mean, I wouldn't say we literally touched it, but man, it's close. We got quite close to it, right? And we'll see if we actually get a little bit closer, but we are pretty darn close. So like I said yesterday, the three overall scenarios that can happen is we just get simply rejected by it, right? And that could be potentially bearish as well, right? But if we just get rejected from that, then I think we'll come down to the 50-day moving average. If we break below that, then you kind of want to get a little bit more nervous if you're a bull. But if we just bounce off the 50-day moving average, there's a chance that we can just come right back up to retest it one more time, and then I think there's a decent chance we break through it finally, right? That's option one. Option two is we break through it, come back down to retest it successfully, and then we continue up forward even from there. So probably like coming from here to 300 ultimately, right? Maybe still come down to the 50-day moving average first, but then ultimately come back up, break through it, get to 300, probably get rejected, come back down, retest the breakout of the red line, and then assuming that's successful, we continue our way higher, and then we start going well into the 300s, right? That's also a possibility, which I think is actually pretty likely. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens, right? Where essentially, again, overall rejection, maybe go sideways, but probably come down somewhere around here, 250s-ish, come back up, retest it once again, this time break through it, come back up to about 300 here, come back down to retest it, and then we make our way higher. Something like this really wouldn't shock me if this is roughly the move that we get moving forward, right? But that's, of course, just a possibility. Another possibility I talked about yesterday that I'll reiterate is, of course, that double top pattern, right? Which is a little bit more obvious in the weekly, I guess, but we'll look at it on a daily as well. Let's check out the weekly. Maybe the weekly is a bit easier to see. I guess the weekly is a little bit easier, but ultimately, we overall can have a double top where we had a rejection over here around, 300-ish, give or take, right? And then there's a chance that we come up to somewhere around the same level, right? Maybe even slightly break above the overall trend line, but ultimately get a double top pattern going. And then if we come back down to retest the red trend line and it's not successful, that would be incredibly bearish, because not only is it a false breakout, which are usually bearish, but you also have that double top pattern finally, potentially really taking into fruition, if you will, right? And that, of course, would lead us to a pretty massive sell-off. So that's another thing to pay attention to, especially if we fall out of this channel, and especially if we start setting lower lows, essentially below 210 roughly. So those are the things I would be really, really closely watching and be very closely paying attention to for the rest of September, especially because, again, as I said many times, bearish month for the market overall. So far, it's been actually going pretty well. September, surprisingly, pretty well, right? But October also for Tesla is not a great month as well. So keep that in mind. And on top of that, September, October are usually pretty volatile months. Like it's been extremely not volatile. It's been surprisingly low volatility for these months. Like just strictly speaking on seasonality, which is weird. So there's a potential that we get some potential volatility coming up as well. And that can affect, of course, the markets, because volatility usually, not always, but usually indicates downward pressure on the market. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. That's kind of what I am seeing. So let me know what you think down below. I'm also eyeballing Netflix here. I don't like how it broke below 400, but Netflix also in this massive channel as well that, I'm not a fan that it broke 400. That's kind of concerning. Maybe 370 is next, maybe slightly higher to the bottom of this channel, potential bounce from there. But if Netflix falls out of this channel, could be a pretty massive fall, at which I personally will be very eagerly waiting to buy Netflix. I personally like Netflix. I definitely want to own some, but right now it's looking a little shaky for me. I'm not super confident in it right now either. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. So let me know what you think down below. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. Thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a great weekend. And I'll see you, of course, on Monday. Peace.